Montana, Skirka, and I'm really excited to talk to you about some pretty difficult topics. So I think even coming here tonight and spending your Wednesday evening during quarantine to talk about IBD and mental health, which are two incredibly stigmatized, difficult topics. I just want to kind of like commend you for that, and I really appreciate it. This topic is very personal to me, as you will see, so I just really appreciate you being here with me to get through this really hard thing together. So yeah, as Marty mentioned, I do a lot in the community. I've kind of named myself an integrative wellness educator to sort of encompass what I do, which is to help people, whether they're teens, adults, individuals grappling with chronic health issues, to really find that mind-body connection. And facilitate groups and do speaking engagements. And it's just really all about like, how can we find our inner wisdom and find our inner agency to rediscover what wellness means to us and find that for ourselves through holistic means. And I think that sort of need for autonomy and agency is even more pertinent these days with COVID. Like, our health system is so overloaded and we need support. I mean, we need support as human beings to get through this world, right? But especially when we have chronic health issues. And at the same time, we kind of need to be like that center of our support system. We have to really be in touch with ourselves and what we need in order to advocate for ourselves. Because unfortunately, our system is really great in certain ways. It's really great for acute crises. It's really great when you need surgery or when you get in an accident or at that moment of diagnosis, but it's not necessarily the best for preventative measures and kind of like the day-to-day of dealing with the both physical and mental health aspects of a chronic illness. And that's really what we're talking about today. So I think that my journey through having a chronic illness and sort of being a patient for the majority of my life made me realize how important it was for me to like own the fact that I am my most important healer in this process. And I can't always rely on others to help me without me being able to really know what I need for myself. So I titled this presentation Breaking the Vicious Cycle because that's always how I felt this sort of interaction with physical health and mental health becomes. When we are diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease, we tend to experience many, many mental health challenges alongside. And the reason I say that is because I think that it's not highlighted by our medical professionals necessarily. So we don't necessarily understand that we aren't different or there isn't something wrong with us. Or we're not dealing properly, or someone else would be able to be dealing with this better. Like, all of that stuff is not true. The truth of the matter is that anyone who's diagnosed with a chronic illness that is unpredictable, uncertain, chronic, may also experience mental health challenges, right? And to sort of just normalize that and understand that what you're going through is very difficult. It's a disease that not many people know about. It's a disease that has a lot of stigma around it, having to do with our bowels. It's a disease that makes us want to hide and isolate. And that, again, just exacerbates the mental health effects of this. Patients with IBD experience emotional distress, loss of bowel control, impairment of body image. We know that the treatments can really, and the symptoms can really wreak havoc on the way that we feel about our own body, let alone the pressure that society already puts on us. Sexual inadequacy, social isolation, again, that fear of dependency. What does it mean to be a patient and to not be able to potentially achieve our full potential? What does it mean once I'm diagnosed with an illness? How does that affect the way that I see myself? And then that fear of stigmatization. And I think with stigmatization, it's really important to acknowledge that there's the stigma that we fear from other people, and then the stigma that we can inflict upon ourselves. If we stigmatize ourselves for this illness, we are going to be even more sensitive and aware of the stigma that we're facing from other people. And I also want to say that I just realized a few days ago when kind of revisiting this presentation that it's kind of an important time for me, because it was exactly 10 years ago that I was going through a particularly dark and difficult period of my life, when I was going through 3 successive major surgeries to manage my ulcerative colitis symptoms. So I was diagnosed when I was 17, and it was just sort of not put under control. And it was just this cycle of going to the hospital, emergency, being put on steroids, each time having to be on a higher dose, to the point where I had to have a total colectomy. When I was in the hospital for the total colectomy 10 years ago, winter 2011, I wasn't recovering properly, and I was throwing up bile every half hour or so. I really didn't know what was going on. I was completely out of it. I, at that point, hadn't eaten in a few weeks, was in the hospital. It was actually during the holidays, during the Christmas holidays. So the floor that I was on in the hospital there weren't that many people in it, because they don't book surgeries over the holidays. So I was kind of alone, hobbling through the hallway of Mount Sinai, I was hardly conscious. And what had happened was I had a perforation. I had a hole in my small intestine and had to go in for a second major intensive surgery very soon after I had my colectomy. And so this time, February 2011, it would have been, I had just gone through that experience and now had an ostomy. And then in a few months' time was going to go in for that J-pouch reversal surgery. And it was really during this period where I felt like I couldn't cope with anything else. I had reached my max of being able to cope with the world and with the amount of stress and anxiety that I had been facing, and that it just felt like I was stuck in this survival mode. I'll go to the next slide to sort of highlight some of the ways that I felt about myself mentally, in addition to the intense physical pain, nausea, fatigue that I was experiencing. But really, it was 10 years ago at this time that I was at the height of that. And this last 10 years has been a process for me of slowly, step by step, brick by brick, rebuilding from that point. And I think that acknowledging where we're at and how difficult we feel and how difficult life can be at certain points, and also how isolating it is, because you can have friends and family around you, but they don't know what it's like to go through what you're going through. You hardly know what it is that you're going through. So that isolation of experience can be so difficult. And I think that's why it's so important that we're all together and we can share our stories and talk to one another about these things that maybe other people won't necessarily be able to relate to. But I felt incredibly lonely during that period, being a 21-year-old, trying to have a clue what was going on in my life and how I was going to achieve all the goals that I wanted to achieve in the midst of all of that. Despair, lack of hope, denial, disgust, fear, guilt, a lot of shame. And I think that grief is important here. There's a grieving process that happens when our body goes through a trauma. There's a grieving process that happens when we are hit with a global pandemic. And we need to give ourselves that space and time to grieve and allow that process of grieving to take whatever form it takes, and to just give ourselves time. I mean, I think if I had to tell myself one thing, it would just be just to tell yourself to relax is really hard. And I don't think I would have been able to, but I think to just I was in such a hurry. I was so anxious. I was so caught up with what other people's goals were and what my goals were prior. And I thought going to school and getting high marks and looking like everyone else and acting like everyone else was the most important thing in my life. And I did not prioritize my own health or my own well-being. And that's, I think, why I was stuck in this cycle for so long, because I wasn't even acknowledging how much pain I was in. So being able to acknowledge it now and kind of talk about it is a huge step for any of us, right? Mental health is something that all of us have. We all have a mental health, just like we all have a physical health. It includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we act, how we feel, how we handle stress, how we relate to other people, how we make healthy choices. And I think that relating to other people is also so important, because what happens is the depression, the anxiety tends to make us isolate, and then that isolation tends to make us more and more depressed and anxious, again building on that vicious cycle that we can put ourselves in. So I kind of wanted to highlight the issue that we are dealing with, the quite big issue that we are dealing with. We are dealing with a chronic illness that is very difficult to handle, that we're still trying to understand. There's still new research coming out, but quite frankly, right now, we don't really have a handle on what causes this illness. And, there aren't that many treatments available. The surgeries are very difficult to go through. Like, all of these things are incredibly difficult, and we can go to doctors and they can help us in a certain way, but ultimately they don't necessarily understand that lived experience piece. And so how do we deal with all of this? One way that I have personally been able to come to deal with this in a more resilient fashion is through mindfulness. Now, mindfulness and meditation it's a muscle that we build over time. So much like if we go to the gym once, we're probably not going to get that much stronger. If anything, we're just going to be intimidated, and it's not necessarily going to help us so much if we just go once to the gym. We need to go multiple times, so I'm told, in order to kind of build our muscles and build our strength over time. And that's the exact same thing with mindfulness and meditation. I think there are misconceptions about meditation. People think that meditation is about clearing your mind or about achieving a certain state. It isn't necessarily that at all. It's simply about training ourselves to pay attention in a particular way to this present moment. We are choosing to pay attention to this present moment. So it's on purpose. And judging because so much of our mental health challenges arise when we are worrying about the future or ruminating about the past, right? And this is a very Buddhist idea, where Buddhism is sort of founded on the principle that the human experience includes quite a bit of suffering. And how do we break away from that suffering? We break away from that suffering by not clinging to things, not clinging to pleasure. Oh, I want to, eat that amazing ice cream, and just always waiting for that next pleasure, whatever the pleasure is, and not clinging to the past as well, right? And not running away from what is not comfortable and running towards something that might be more comfortable. And I think when we deal with a chronic illness, we know that feeling very, very intimately. We do not want to be in the situation we're in. And so we can try and, run away from what's going on, or run towards a future that maybe is not real, So how do we allow ourselves to start to break away from that? We practice mindfulness. So I would love to kind of guide everyone through a little bit of a mindfulness meditation and a little bit of a movement exercise together. And so we will begin here by simply assuming a comfortable seat, which hopefully we were all doing right now. And we will kind of shuffle around and just feel really grounded in your sits bones, and then begin to allow your spine to lengthen, right? So we're assuming this upright position where we're not necessarily leaning back in the seat, unless that's, if there's any sort of mobility issues, then take what you will with this, but it's sort of all about assuming this kind of erect, upright position, either placing your feet on the floor or you are comfortable, but really allowing yourself to ground. And if you feel comfortable, beginning to close your eyes. And hello. I think what happened? I got kicked out or something?
Yeah, I think your internet was slowing down a little bit.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Okay, cool. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So you're coming in loud and clear now. Can everyone
Yep.
is it stable again?
It's good there now.
Okay, great. So when did you were we meditating, or was I
We were
off for
just
that?
starting.
We were just
Yeah, the
starting.
sense
Okay,
of
great.
timing was amazing. Yeah,
Yep.
you were just getting going.
That was all part of it, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just share my screen again before I. That's so funny. Okay, so we're still recording, right? Everything's still the same? Okay, great.
Yeah,
so,
still recording.
Okay, great. So we're all closing our eyes, getting comfortable, reading down through our seat, closing the eyes. And as we close the eyes, that focus that we're always in our busy world, we are always focused outwards. We are always focused on the next task, the next thing we have to do. So for a moment here in time together on this Wednesday evening, can we begin to turn that focus inwards towards ourselves? And once we do that, we will begin to notice sensations. Can you notice the sensation of your sits bones? And the pressure, the grounding that you feel as you sit on whatever chair you're on. If your feet are on the floor, can you feel that sensation of the ground beneath your feet? What does it feel like? How does your clothing feel on your skin? And just beginning to notice. And as we observe, we drop into that mindful state, that mindful awareness. Perhaps your hands are on your lap. What feedback do you pick up? And noticing that without moving anything at all, we can feel so much through the palms of our hands and our finger pads. Perhaps you feel your back along the back of your chair or pillow or cushion. Simply noticing to any sensation within the body. Watching it flow past. So we're constantly changing. And it is quite natural for your attention to wander from this state of observation. Perhaps you begin to have thought patterns cross your mind, certain thoughts like maybe a thought about this meditation or a thought about what you want to do after this presentation is over, or something that happened earlier today. Whatever it is, that's okay. As soon as we notice that we are thinking, we simply gently guide our attention back to that connection with the felt bodily experience, becoming curious here to what comes up. Maybe you feel tingling in a certain part of your body. Maybe you feel a certain temperature of coolness or warmth. Maybe you feel certain tension, or, as likely or potentially when we're dealing with chronic illness, perhaps a little bit of pain. And the trick here is to practice meeting whatever sensations come up with that non-judgmental acceptance, with saying, I see you, I feel you, I accept you for what you are right now. And you may or may not have become conscious and aware through this scanning of the body, of the flow of breath. Can we become particularly aware and curious about the way that you are breathing right now, noticing that we are breathing at all times of the day, whether we are aware of it or not. And so there's no need to change the way that you're breathing. We're simply becoming aware and deeply connected with that process. Feeling the air enter your nostrils, enter your lungs, maybe your belly, and then flow out in this cycle, in this rhythm that is uniquely your own. And again, if and when the mind wanders, we simply guide it back. Placing that light awareness on the breath, its journey through the body, or maybe there's a particular area in the body that you can feel the breath most strongly. Maybe it's your chest or your belly, and you can place your attention right there and feel that movement. And we're going to slowly add a little bit of physical movement here. On our next inhale, we'll just reach our shoulder blades up towards our ears. And as we exhale, we let them roll down the back. And so now we can include this movement into our awareness, inhaling to lift the shoulders and exhaling to release. And as we move the body in connection with this mindful awareness, this is yoga. This is yoga meaning union of mind, body, spirit. How does it feel to move? Inhaling to lift and exhaling to release. Slowly coming into some neck stretching now. We'll bring just one ear. Slowly tipping our chin towards our chest. Go really slow so you can feel each placement along the neck. Go back and forth. You can keep your eyes closed. Getting really curious here about how it feels to be in your human body right now and how it moves. Nice. And then maybe you move your body in a certain way that it feels like it wants right now. Maybe you come back to the shoulder roll or the neck roll. Maybe we can lift our arms. If you feel comfortable, we can lift our arms both up as we inhale and back down as we exhale. And so with this like really slow movement, inhale, the inhale really facilitates that lift and that energy. It's really the part of the breath that facilitates action. And that exhale is all about release, contraction, return inwards. And so we're getting really here connected to our body, what it's asking for, maybe certain areas of tension, and how do we attend to our body in this way? How do we move in ways that serve us and begin to connect to that feeling. And slowly from here, we'll come back to that nice tall seat. And now we can intentionally invite a long, deep breath in through the nose, fill the chest and belly with air, and out through the mouth. Once more, in through the nose, fill your body with air. Imagine sending it to all parts of the body. And release. You can slowly open your eyes and just take a moment here to feel if you feel any different than before this meditation. And if this is something that you could potentially want to include into your daily, weekly, monthly routine, as really just a few minutes is more than enough to connect to what is here and what is real, to what is within. Our mind will come up with all sorts of reasons why we don't have time to meditate, we can't meditate. Our mind likes to play a lot of tricks on us and likes to direct us more towards numbing and distracting ourselves, which is totally fine. It's great. We all need good distractions sometimes. But a lot of research has been done that says that, allowing ourselves to learn how to let thoughts pass, let emotions pass, let sensations pass, and be mindful in the midst of it is a much more long-term beneficial strategy for dealing with mental health challenges or just the stress of everyday life than continuing to distract ourselves or telling ourselves not to be stressed. Mindfulness is not telling ourselves not to be stressed. It's the opposite. It's inviting in non-judgmentally whatever comes up. And that's a much more healthy way of managing and dealing with our emotions and our psychological distress. But it's not easy. I mean, it's a simple process, meditation, but it's not necessarily easy, right? So now that we're all kind of like a little looser and a little bit more hopefully zen, these are, I think, talking about thoughts, like a belief is just a thought that we've had a lot of times. So I think there are certain things that we very, very strongly hold on to, certain beliefs we have about ourselves. And those beliefs can cause us so much pain and despair and distress. And so the good news with that is that we can shift those beliefs. I mean, the power of affirmation, of telling ourselves things, is really strong. We can start to change the patterns in our brain and the way that we see ourselves. This disease can skew us to believe certain things about ourselves that are not healthy, and we want to kind of change that direction. So here are some things that I believed that I no longer believe and would like to impart on you. You are not to blame for your illness. It's so complicated. A complicated number of factors came together for us to be diagnosed with a chronic health condition. Anyone that can point to one specific thing and say that's the cause or that's the cure, I'd be very wary of that information. And I think it's just really important for us to not blame ourselves for this. You would never intentionally give yourself an illness. You are not a series of disconnected body parts. So here, this comes back to when we go to the hospital, they ask us about our intestines. They ask us about our gastrointestinal tract. And when we go to a psychiatrist, they ask us about our brain. And it's like this feeling starts to develop that we are just these disconnected body parts. And of course, that's not the way that our anatomy works. That's not the way that we work as human beings. We are whole. We are so much more than our diagnosis, and our gut affects our brain, affects the rest of our body, affects our mood. So to let go of that disconnected feeling. You are not broken, and you are certainly not alone, which is something that I did not necessarily know when I was going through the meat of this ordeal. What are you then? You are so much more than a patient. It's really, really easy to forget that. I certainly completely forgot about who I was beyond being a patient. I forgot about what I enjoyed. I forgot about characteristics of myself that were more than what I had to tell a doctor, the symptoms I had to tell a doctor, the pain that I felt. Even though others could see it in me, I truly could not see myself beyond the patient label. So to just remind ourselves of who we are in our totality is so helpful and beneficial. Just for going through this, for being here, for trying to care for yourself, you are so strong. You can not have, I mean, I don't have a gallbladder, I don't have a colon, and I'm still whole, right? Like there's like this wholeness to us that's beyond the fact of what organs we have or don't have, or what feels sore at certain points in our lives. I still have to believe in that wholeness within me, despite the fact that I happen to not have those organs anymore. You are healing, you are worthy, and you are most certainly enough. That was a really hard one for me. But when we go through something that's very, very difficult, a crisis, just managing that from day to day is more than enough. And the thing is, this illness, to some extent, so I think that can make it very difficult. If other people don't see that we're sick, and we can kind of play smile authentic, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary. What the only thing that's necessary is for you to live the life that's authentic to you and to take care of yourself in a way that really makes sense for you. Whether someone believes that you're sick or not, or sees that you're sick or not, is completely irrelevant, because you are the one that understands and knows your internal experience. So now we come to kind of like the meat of this presentation, what we've come to through this journey. What I have come to understand through my work with myself, through my work with my patients and my students, through my interactions with friends, is that the way that we enter this vicious cycle is the same way that we come out of this vicious cycle. The cycle is created through difficulties that stem from mind, that affect body, that affect emotions, that affect spirit. And so the same thing can be said for how to uplift ourselves and break free of that cycle. We have to seek integrative supports. If we only focus on our gastrointestinal tract, we're missing so much more of the picture. So we have to really think about what is one thing, activity, support I can do that can start to build me up. And that might include therapy. That might include yoga, meditation, gratitude journaling, self-compassion practice, peer support groups, connecting to potentially your spirituality, or what spirituality means for you. I think being faced with something like a chronic illness, for me, definitely like made me question a lot of things about the meaning of life, the meaning of my life, what was important to me, what wasn't important to me, certain values I wanted to have, how I wanted to live. And for me, that was very much a spiritual quest that I'm continuing to go on, which is really fun. And oftentimes I would pose these questions to doctors thinking that they were supposed to be the ones to answer it. And it's like, they can't, they're not, that's just not their role, right? So there's so many things we can do. And then in connecting with our emotions and expressing our emotions, I think a lot of it comes down to, what did you enjoy when you were a really little kid? Did you enjoy dancing before you knew that you were supposed to feel self-conscious about it? Did you enjoy journaling or painting or drawing or singing or listening to music or performing? Like, what did you love? And can you rediscover that? And can you approach it with non-judgmentalness, with curiosity, with adventure? I think that COVID has stripped life of so much, that now that we're hopefully being able to be reintroduced to society and to life again, how can we start to think about what would make us genuinely happy? Like, there were times where I was so sick, and the only thing I did was once a week I went to an improv class. And somehow I hobbled my way there. And just the fact that no one there had a clue that I was this like sick girl, and I could just be silly. Like, it was so healing, it was much more healing than any medication I was taking at the time. So let's think of these as medications, as prescriptions that we're giving ourselves in addition to the prescriptions that our doctors are giving us. How can we move better, feel better, play better, laugh better? And how can that, again, start to rebuild ourselves, our sense of self, and our sense of wholeness and health and well-being? Another really important part of this is, who do we surround ourselves with? I have noticed anecdotally, which is quite interesting to me, that I find people that have Crohn's and colitis are people pleasers. They are people that really want other people to be happy. They really want to do things for other people. They really want to make other people feel comfortable. And it can be really hard when you're the patient, and maybe people start to treat you differently, or maybe you're still trying to tend to everyone's needs. You're not looking at your own needs. Are the people that you're surrounding yourself with toxic or healthy? Are the relationships you're engaged in toxic or healthy? Again, these things can give us a better, closer sense to wellness, or can drain us incredibly of our resources that we don't necessarily have as much of as we used to. If we have a very small amount of resources, we want to direct those into relationships that are feeding us as much as we're feeding them. And like, the overarching thing here is to let go of perfectionism. Perfectionism is an illusion. We can direct perfectionism even towards our health. We can think, oh, like, I need to be healthier. I need to have, my life isn't going to start until X, until Y, until Z. And it's like, no, our life is right now. I still have complications with my J pouch. I still feel way more fatigued than I normally would. Like, I still have ongoing struggles every day. This illness has irrevocably changed my life. But that's okay, because I'm trying daily to let go of that perfection, and to just allow myself to be a human being just like everyone else that has their struggles and that has their weaknesses and their strengths, and it's just trying to like figure it out just like anyone else. And the truth is, once we really go through this process, we can start to see the gifts that are there, the lessons that we learn through the challenges we go through, that we can use to help others and help ourselves. So, that being said, I am so appreciative of you listening and being here, and just being here with me through this and listening. And I would love to hear from you. So here are all the ways that you can connect with me if you have any questions or comments or feedback. Because, I mean, especially on these online forums, it's kind of just like I'm talking a lot, and then, I close my computer and I'm alone again. So definitely reach out and let me know, what your thoughts are about all of this. And then now we'll have time for some questions, but I just wanted to put that out there. So write down my information, and please, please, please get in touch. Thank you so much. Here are some of the references that I used in my presentation.
Hi, Montana. There's no questions in the box, but can you just go back one slide? I don't know if everybody had enough time to get your information copied down.
Oh, she may have. Oh, there we go. Hi, Montana. Did you catch that?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Sorry.
Lisa was just looking to get you to go back one slide, just so we could have a look at your contact information long enough to reach out to you properly.
Oh no. Back to my information?
Yes,
please.
Okay, here we go.
Beautiful.
So you can find me through my website, through Instagram, and through my email. I teach yoga classes. I teach yin and journaling, pay what you can right now, monthly. We're going to do park yoga once that's allowed and it gets a little warmer, in Toronto at Christie Pitts. And then I work one-on-one with people with chronic health issues to introduce more integrative approaches into their lives. I do teen programs for self-esteem. We do spirituality circles. So there's like all these things that I like to do and continue to kind of experiment and create, to figure out ways that I can support the community.
That's really cool. So I was actually talking to a few people about the event, and we're kind of talking about some of the hot topics that that people are thinking about when it comes to meditation. So I actually, I wrote them down, and I wanted to actually go through them, and maybe just, you know, if we go back to the part where you were talking about meditation, almost like an exercise, or taking that approach, I think a lot of, a lot of imagery around meditation is some guy in a robe sitting under a tree somewhere, kind of just chilling out. But I really do sort of connect with this idea that mindfulness and sort of meditation really is an exercise. So I was hoping you could come back to that and maybe talk us through like what your mentality is like in approaching it. Like, is there a routine that you set up specifically around meditation? What does that look like for you, and sort of what you talk to others about?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question. And I think that's like, yeah, it's a huge misconception, I think, about mindfulness. And people say, like, I can't meditate because I have too many thoughts or my head is too full. And I'm like, it's the same thing that people say about yoga, right? Like, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. And it's like, no, that's why you should be meditating. That's why you should be doing yoga. We all feel that way, right? Like if we don't move, we're going to feel inflexible. It's the same thing with our mind. If we don't like meditate, or even when we do, like we're always going to have thoughts. That's the nature of being a human. We have thoughts, they go, they continue to evolve. That's the nature of being in this incredibly fast, interconnected world, right? So yeah, it really truly is a muscle that we build over time. And if we set aside even 5 minutes a day, there are really great apps that you can use, like Headspace, Insight Timer, lots of free ones on the internet. Like I do meditation and yoga classes as well. So there's so many resources out there for us. If we set aside like 5 minutes a day and just say, okay, this is the time of day I'm going to do it. If I skip it today, that's okay. Like, let's not judge ourselves. Let's just get right back on it. I think it's one of those things that over time you will start to notice. In your everyday life, you'll be like, oh, I was about to react negatively to that situation. And I had a little bit of space between the event and the reaction, because it's just building that space of being like, okay, I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. There's like this inner awareness that can just perceive them passing by. Right. And so often, especially in the heat of a moment, we connect with our emotion, we connect with our thought, and then that thought becomes dominant and goes and goes and goes and goes. And rather than pushing away that thought or pushing away that emotion, we just say, like, like, I'm feeling anger. Like, where does that, like, where do I feel that? Like, how do I even know that I feel anger? Like, where do I feel that in my body? Getting like really curious about anger or about stress or about tension or about whatever is going on in that moment for you, can begin to give us space from that experience in ourselves.
Yeah, wow. So, I mean, you're really talking about sort of how to build on it, like that building routine. That's really cool. So that was almost a predecessor question to the one that I heard the most. And that was like, hey, we kind of got this good routine going, and then COVID hit, and now we're all in lockdown, and like all the routines are out of whack.
Yeah.
And like they're like, oh my God, I've heard this several times now, where it's like, oh my God, I don't know how to keep my routine going. I don't know how to start a routine right now. So like, I guess that's kind of the lead up to the question to yourself, is really, what does that routine look like in COVID for you? Or, like to others, does it change? Are there new ways that we can adapt? What do you think about
Right.
that?
No, I think it's a really good question. And to be honest with you, like I often think that if I didn't have to, I feel very lucky that I'm teaching these things constantly. So that
Oh, you're freezing again.
so it definitely gives me, I think that, oh no,
Oh, you're back. Okay,
I'm back. I'm back. Okay, I was just saying I feel really lucky that I teach yoga because it forces me to continue that during this time, because I feel the same way. Like, I think it's really, really hard right now to find any sense of routine or normalcy. I think finding peers, it's like anything, finding a buddy and being like, okay, we're both finding it really hard to establish a routine right now. We're both feeling just this like COVID fatigue. Can we pick a half an hour, or pick an hour, or pick an online yoga class that we're going to do, or pick a meditation that we're going to do together through Zoom, or we're going to call each other after? I think that the buddy effect can be useful, especially if you're an extrovert. um, I've been doing that with a few friends with dance, like just like online dance classes, because it's like hard and you feel kind of silly doing it by yourself in your apartment, right? But I think that once we start, that's the thing about routines. They are really hard to start, but can we start with one small one? Can we take the first step to sign up for something? Oftentimes, giving a little bit of money to pay for something, if we're able to, we'll be like, okay, I have to attend that class or that session or whatever that is because I paid for it and it's at this time and it's a live stream, so the person's going to be there. That's why at my classes that I teach, I always like to like have a conversation before and after, because it's like, okay, we're still trying to get into that community element. The other thing is, I mean, you can start to even think about what you would want your routine to look like once you are able to go out of your home, and then that can make you really excited. So it's like, okay, when COVID's over, I'm going to want to go to the gym. And then you might think, okay, well, if that's what I'm building up to, how do I kind of prepare for that? Are there any like floor exercises I could do in the meantime? Is there time I could set in my schedule for stretching, whatever that means, for cooking, for whatever that is? Because we obviously have the time these days. It's just about kind of dividing our work day so that it's not all work, but just like carving out time. Like, okay, when I'm in my bedroom, my phone's not with me. When I'm in this room, I'm doing yoga, putting my phone away, like just carving out those little spaces.
That's really good. And I'm going to use that as a bridge into the last question that I got. And actually that last question, I'm going to give credit to him since he was here momentarily. So that second question came from Dave. Hopefully he's out there with good karma right now listening. But yeah, I'll make sure to get the answer back to him. So the third question that often comes up is they just have no idea where to go. We're like, oh yeah, these are great ideas and there's lots of advice to go and get involved. Do you have good ways of finding these places, or searching around for things to do, or like what kind of advice do you give to people to actually find these different
Right. No, that's a good question. I think it's a very much like a cumulative effect, right? That I think oftentimes the hardest thing is putting ourselves out there. I have so many friends who are scared to do new things. Like they don't necessarily feel like they even have a lot of hobbies outside of work, because the idea of going to a yoga class or a dance class or a kickboxing class or whatever your thing is, a painting class, and not necessarily knowing anyone and not knowing where it is and how to get like all that stuff, it can just build up this block of fear. And I think that I think that's sort of one of the gifts that I got through this difficult process that I went through, where I really was so like at my breaking point and at the lowest point I possibly could be, that I like knew that I had to do things to build myself up, and was able to sort of break that fear to like put myself out there and like go to a new class. Because I think ultimately we can do yoga, we can do Google searches, and we can find interesting things and we can just try them out, right? I mean, if people have any specific questions of resources they want, like they can reach out to me specifically. And I feel like I've accumulated a lot over the last few years. But I mean, I think it just starts with like reaching out, with asking questions, with becoming curious. oftentimes even our medical professionals won't even think to tell, like they know a lot of different resources that maybe they don't necessarily think to tell us. But if we say, hey, I'm having difficulty with my mental health, like, do you know any therapists that are great? Or I'm interested in art therapy, or I mean, whatever you think could be out there is out there. Like, especially in Canada, there are so many cool new therapies and creative things out there and spirituality related things that could really attract you. So I think not losing hope and trying things out, like maybe your thing will just be pottery or gardening, but we just can start by like getting curious. I know there's like meetup groups even that you can look up and attend free events. There's peer support groups through Crohn's and colitis, right? So it's just often taking that first step. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.